It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time to a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
How long you been doing this?
12 years now.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
When God tells you what to do, you cannot hesitate.
Hi, I'm Nat, and right now I want to talk about the movie Sound of Freedom. Now, if you don't know what Sound of Freedom is about, or you've only heard about it in passing, well, it details the horrors of child sex trafficking. And I know that doesn't sound like the best topic for a hit summer film, but it's not only an important movie, but a good movie. And it's important for more reasons than one. The most important reason is because about 25 million people are currently living under slavery, which is the highest number it's ever been in history. And it's not just sex trafficking, but also forced labor and organ harvesting and other horrific conditions that people are living under. And unfortunately, about 20% of those are children. And to add on, the United States is also the highest consumer of child porn in the world, but other countries don't stay far behind. Now, the story depicted in the movie follows the true story of an operation that happened about 9 years ago under Tim Ballard. Tim Ballard is an ex-Department of Homeland Security agent who, after seeing that he couldn't do as much for children as he wanted to working for the US government, went off on his own, gathered a few other ex-agents from the CIA, FBI, Marines, and they went off to countries where they could bust child sex trafficking rings. And this has been documented for years. There's multiple documentaries on the work he has done, others have done, and unfortunately, it still stayed kind of a silent, quiet, we don't talk about this at the dinner table topic, even though it's one of the most important and horrific things that are currently happening to millions and millions of people all around the world. Now, I am not a religious person at all, but I do believe that this is the purest form of evil. And once you delve deep into this topic and realize how depraved and horrific the things that some people can do to children and others are, well, you can't really forget about that. And I think that this is what can actually make a change and why this film is so important. But aside from the very important subject that is child sex trafficking, this film is important because it helps prove that Hollywood is self-emulating and it is self-imploding. It's collapsing upon itself, and we not only seeing that with the recent writer's strike and the actor's strike that just was announced today, but because this movie beat out Indiana Jones and actually recouped more than double of the budget it had. This film had a tiny budget of $14.5 million, which is nothing when you compare it to the massive giant budgets that most of the films that it's going up against in the box office had. When it released on July 4th, this movie had a goal of selling 2 million tickets to represent the 2 million children that are trafficked around the world. And it more than surpassed that goal. But when it opened in way less theaters than, say, Indiana Jones. And here in Vancouver, it was only showing in other cities, but Guy and I were willing to go wherever to just watch it and support it. And fortunately, it opened in a theater here in Vancouver, but it did open in the ugliest and most run-down theater that we have. But we were there and a lot of other people were there. Some people were crying almost throughout the whole film. A lot of people don't know that this movie is actually kind of old. It was shot all the way back in 2018, 2019, and was just sitting waiting for release. And this is because of many different circumstances. And as a Mexican, I have to say, it is proudly produced by a Mexican man called Eduardo Verástegui, and it was directed by another Mexican man called Alejandro Monteverde, who worked with Tim Ballard and a lot of the agents that go through these operations to tell this story as best as it could be told, and I do think it was told in the best way possible. The film was originally owned by Fox Latin America, but when Disney bought Fox, it bought the movie as well. And Eduardo Verástegui, who is the producer, recently in an interview with Agustín Laje, which is a Latin American political commentator and author, he told how initially, after Disney bought the film, Disney Latin America, which is based in Argentina, was willing to release the film. But then suddenly the higher-ups in Disney, not Latin America, the big ones, decided to not release it because it wasn't the kind of film that Disney wanted to put out, not even under Fox. So it sat there, and then the pandemic came, and Eduardo and everybody involved with the film were trying to get it to streaming. They talked to Netflix, Amazon Prime, Paramount, all the streaming services, and they all passed on it and said no. And then eventually they joined forces with Angel Studios, which releases other independent films, and they've now finally been able to get it out into theaters and for everyone to watch. And more people are watching it, probably as we speak. Also, in that interview with Agustín Laje, Eduardo Verástegui talked about how when the film was in production, Jim Caviezel, who is the star, he was also in Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson, Jim Caviezel's wife wasn't so happy with him traveling to Colombia because she thought it was going to be very dangerous. And I mean, yes, they're filming a movie about child sex trafficking in Colombia. But what happened next was that Tim Ballard offered to bring about 30 ex-Marines to come help Jim Caviezel's wife feel safe with him traveling to Colombia. And so they went to Colombia and started shooting the film. And then Eduardo noticed that a lot of the people that were supposed to be on set, because these Marines were supposed to play extras or be counted as extras, were not there. They were missing for a few weeks. And he didn't want to tell Tim because he didn't want to worry anybody. So Eduardo kind of stayed silent. And then eventually it came out in the papers in Colombia that a child sex trafficking ring had just been discovered and had been taken down. And after that, Eduardo was telling Tim about it, who also hadn't been in the filming and in the film set. And Tim told him, well, yes, it was us. That's why they were missing. So it's kind of a beautiful thing that just by shooting the film, all of these people that were there to protect actually did something even better through Tim Ballard and by breaking down this child sex trafficking ring in Colombia. And you can find that story. It's also online. If you read Spanish, you can find it in Spanish. It's all the way back from 2018. However, if you'd expect that everybody would be on board with a film that finally demystifies and is open and talking about one of the most horrific things that is happening in the world currently, well, you'd be wrong to think that everybody is completely on board with it, because a lot of the mainstream media has been coming out against this film, against Tim Ballard, against the actor, against the theaters playing it, and the people that go to watch it. And I want to show some of the articles that they've decided to run with and apparently think it's a good idea to publish. So from Rolling Stone, Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms. The QAnon-tinged thriller about child trafficking is designed to appeal to the conscience of a conspiracy-addled boomer. So for old people. Then we have The Guardian, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon-adjacent thriller seducing America. Jim Caviezel stars as a hero trying to stop child traffickers in a paranoid new movie turning into a surprise box office hit. And, I mean, it's kind of interesting to think why on earth is the mainstream media trying to bash a movie that is speaking about child sex trafficking and the evils of it. And you can have all the theories you want. There's, I think, two big ones that we need to consider, which is number one, who are they protecting? I mean, the statistics that are in the film and talked about Tim Ballard, Jim Caviezel, Eduardo Verástegui in a lot of interviews are out there, and they're from the US government, they're from the United Nations, they are true statistics about what's happening, and why are they trying to pretend like it's all a conspiracy theory? You'll find a lot of articles talking about how it's a right-wing conspiracy, how it's tied to QAnon, and why you shouldn't go watch it, essentially. But we have to wonder, what does the mainstream media have to gain by trying to deny that sex trafficking is happening? I mean, the story it tells is true. And Tim Ballard was actually all the way back about 9 years ago when the operation the film is based on actually took place. He was interviewed by CBS about it, and they showed the footage of the real operation and how it went down. And as I mentioned, there's also a lot of documentaries, but I'm going to show a little bit of that CBS clip.
Tim Ballard has one mission: to track down child traffickers. 4 months ago, Colombian authorities asked him to investigate a tip that children were being sold there as sex slaves. Ballard, a former Homeland Security agent, now heads up Operation Underground Railroad, a nonprofit group that rescues trafficked kids.
This is the table where we're going to do the negotiation.
Less than 24 hours after the operatives landed, the suspected traffickers arrived on the island, and the final deal with the undercover team began. 54 boys and girls aged 11 to 18 were ushered in for what had been billed as a sex party. They were given candy and drinks and told to wait in this small room.
This little 11-year-old boy, I remember, he asked one of my operatives if they could give him some cocaine or something. He said, they usually give me something because I'm really scared.
By the time the deal was done, the alleged traffickers were set to make $25,000. That transaction was never completed. 25 Colombian special operatives stormed the party, arresting 5 suspects, 4 men and 1 former beauty queen, all charged with child trafficking. The victims, 29 of whom are under 18, were evacuated, given medical exams, and placed in a rehabilitation center where specialists are working to undo the damage.
Right before I got in the boat, we had to walk by this room where the kids were, and they put their hand up. And I touched their hand and see that there's liberation now.
Liberating one child at a time.
And I'd really love to know why the mainstream media is acting like this. Is it out of guilt? Should we check their hard drives? Are they protecting people? But another reason is because this film, as an independent film that was completely grassroots in its efforts and its marketing to reach more and more audiences, well, it completely crumbles the Hollywood model of filmmaking and the necessity of having big studios with big budgets to make a movie that most people want to watch. As we can see here from the box office numbers, I mean, Sound of Freedom is number 2 right now, and it's grossed in total $53,922,551. And right now it's only released in Canada and the United States. It's not available worldwide. And it's right behind Mission Impossible, which released today, which is incredible. I mean, Indiana Jones is now all the way down here. And it's more than made up its budget, and it's still in way less theaters than most of these other big, giant movies. And we can see here, too, how it just skyrocketed in a very short amount of time. It's basically a week. And not only that, but I also think that a lot of these mainstream publications, Hollywood connected, of course, and most of their salaries are paid for by Hollywood producers and Hollywood studios to write positive reviews. Well, I think a lot of them are also scared of movies that are coming out that have a message or have an action plan or talk about important subjects rather than superheroes and giant monsters and scary things. Because this is a real-world scary thing that might actually get people talking beyond the movie or beyond debating who their favorite characters are. This goes beyond all of that, and they did it all independently by a Mexican producer, a Mexican director, and a guy that goes and busts child sex trafficking rings. I think that this film is going to help highlight not only that, but the situation at the border, the situation with online pornography consumption, the consumption of child pornography, and of PDF files and groomers online for children, because any mother or father that goes sees this film is going to be a lot more on guard about their children and is going to finally turn an eye towards a problem that doesn't really affect you until maybe it does, and then it becomes a tragedy. And the Sound of Freedom is actually doing something which is really cool, which is they have this Pay It Forward campaign. I'll leave the link down below. So if you've watched it and you want somebody else to watch it, you can pay for tickets for other people to go see it. If you don't have or can't afford to go, or you have other priorities and you don't want to spend money on a ticket, well, they also have these Pay It Forward tickets where you can actually get a free ticket because the producers, the people involved think it's important enough to let as many people watch it as they can. And recently, Eduardo Verástegui also said that Elon Musk said that after it's released everywhere else, I just found out that in Mexico it's releasing on the 31st of August. After it's had its worldwide release, Elon Musk plans to put it on Twitter free for anyone to watch. So then nobody will have an excuse. But I would say go watch it in a theater surrounded by people that are bawling their eyes out. It is that sense of community that we used to have when we used to go to movies to watch important things and interesting stories. And I think having that aspect of seeing how other people react around you makes it even more powerful than it already is. I've also heard some women, some people say, well, it's a horrible subject. I don't know if I can stomach it. I'm a mother. I don't really want to go see it. I would implore you, especially if you're having that reaction of saying, I don't want to go watch a film about child sex trafficking. It's too difficult. To go watch it even more if that is your reason for why you don't want to go see it. Because that shows how important and how taboo of a subject it is. And by making subjects like this, like grooming, like things that happen to children or people in places where we don't even want to think about, well, we're letting them happen even more, because in darkness, things like this, people that do these things fester. There are also organizations that you can support. I would say OUR, which is Operation Underground Railroad, which is how Tim Ballard started all of his efforts. And you can look into it yourself. You can verify that it is something that you want to support. I am not in any way involved with it other than supporting it and thinking that they're doing a good job. You can also find other organizations doing something about it and just speaking out about it. Light is the most important thing that can come to this subject. So you can go watch the film. If you've already watched it or really can't stomach it, then buy a ticket for somebody else and tell your friends and family about it. Tell them about the subject in general and inform yourself, research into it, and learn more about it to keep speaking out about it against the groomers, the PDF files, the child sex traffickers, because it is a growing industry that is about to surpass the drug trade in worldwide numbers. And that is just horrifying that that is happening. And we can't keep living in our little easy, perfect bubbles if we want any kind of change to happen, be it with this or anything else. Talk about this subject in general. Don't let it go back into the darkness. And for now, thank you for watching me and have a great rest of your day.